for the regular meeting of the Oxnard Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting, regular meeting for January 26th. The time is 8:33. I'd like to read this before we get going. This meeting held in pursuant to the State Emergency Services Act and the Governor's Emergency Declaration, Governor's Executive Order N-29-20, to allow members of the City Council and staff to participate via teleconference. Pursuant to the Ventura County Public Health Officer's Order and Governor's Executive Order N-33-20, all city buildings are temporarily closed to the public. The public is encouraged to view the meeting from home on the city's website at oxnard.org/city-meetings, Spectrum Channel 10, Frontier Channel 35, or YouTube at youtube.com/Oxnard News. Video recordings are typically available online immediately following the meeting. Please see the link in the Measure M pre-recorded presentation video for each agenda item below. The public may provide comments to the City Council via email at cityclerk@oxnard.org no later than 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Please identify the committee name, committee meeting date, and agenda item on the email subject line. A telephone option for public comments is also available at this time due to the State of California stay-at-home order. Request to speak may be submitted no later than 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Use the form on the city's website to submit the request, oxnard.org/city-meetings, or call the city clerk's office at 805-385-7803, or email your request to cityclerk@oxnard.org. The city has filed pre-election and post-election lawsuits regarding the validity of Measure M. The judge has not yet ruled on the legal sufficiency of Measure M. And Measure M is what is in place at this time to prevent the presentations from being seen by the public at the meeting of the scheduled meeting. We can have the roll call, and I see some new faces. Ms. Guzman, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And when it comes to that time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We have the roll call, posting of the agenda, and flag salute.
Mayor Zaragoza.
Here.
Councilmember Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember Perello.
Here.
Thank you.
Posting of the agenda was appropriate.
Yes, Councilmember Perello.
Okay. And Ms. Guzman, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And we take a moment of silence for incidents in the world currently.
Of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Guzman. Madam Clerk, I know you sent me a message if we had a public comment, and I don't know where I put my message. I'm not seeing it. Do we have a public comment for items not on the agenda, Madam Clerk?
Chair Perello, we do not have public comment for this meeting.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda, we have nothing. And now we go into reports, and we have the first report is Public Works. The subject is amendments to general on-call global technical soils and material testing, laboratory services, and inspection services. The recommendation, I'll let the staff read the recommendation, please.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. I'd like to remind everybody that the presentation for this was pre-recorded due to Measure M. And the recommendation is that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that City Council authorize the mayor to execute the following amendments for general on-call geotechnical soils and material testing, laboratory services, and inspection services. The first being the First Amendment to Agreement A-8078 with Fugro USA Land Incorporated to increase the contract by $100,000 for a new contract value amount of $350,000 and extend the term date to December 31st, 2021. Second, another First Amendment to Agreement A-8079 with Layton Consulting Incorporated to increase that contract by $100,000 for a new contract value amount of $350,000 with a term date of December 31st, 2021. And finally, number 3, the First Amendment to Agreement 8256-18-PW with Twining Incorporated to increase that contract amount by $100,000 for a new contract value amount of $350,000 with a term date of December 31st, 2021. I'm happy to take any questions.
Do any of the committee members have any questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Mayor.
I'm assuming that this geotechnical soil materials testing and laboratory services are mandatory items that we have to perform, for Public Works. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct. We use this for a variety of projects ranging from anything like our street resurfacing, our pipeline replacements, and if we're trying to say build any new facilities at the wastewater plant, we also need to make sure that we have some geotechnical investigation studies done for that as well. It's a critical component of our operation.
Thank you. Mhm, mhm.
Councilmember Lopez? No questions. Okay. I do have a couple of questions, and I did appreciate your presentation, Sarnak. The contracts are 3 of them be extended $100,000, and I'm bringing this question based on a comment that was made yesterday, but there's been a couple of comments in the previous 2 meetings. People make an assumption that we're going to have when a contract is extended for $100,000, this one here is 100. These are $100,000, bumping them up to 3. That doesn't mean there's going to be $300,000 work done right after this contract is done. It means collectively there has been work done that is amounted to this amount of money. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
No, you are correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing, when it says extend the contracts to the end of this year, will it be a fiscal year or a calendar year?
This is a calendar year.
Okay, and the last question, with these companies that we are dealing with, we continually, as they provide the work for us, we monitor if there is any problems with their quality of work in any other areas that they work on aside from just our work.
Oh, absolutely. That is continuously monitored by staff and the DIR.
As one councilman, I'm extremely grateful to hear that answer. Do we have any other questions by committee members?
Mhm.
I'm interested in the recommendation of the committee.
So need a motion to approve?
Do we have one?
So move.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Zaragoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Chair Perrello.
Yes,
Thank you. Motion passes 3-0.
thank you very much. Moving on to the next item. Public Works, subject amendment to on-call professional services agreement. And I'll have staff read the recommendation, please.
Yeah, so just a reminder again on this one, this was also pre-recorded due to Measure M. The recommendation is that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council authorize the mayor to execute the following amendments for on-call engineering and construction management services, including, for example, for Campus Park activation and the Central Park Fountain Control Room renovation projects, as well as several water and wastewater capital improvement projects. The first being the First Amendment to Agreement A-8154 with Kennedy Jenks Consultants Incorporated to increase that contract amount by $400,000 for a new contract value of $1,150,000 with a term date of September 3rd, 2022. And second, the Fourth Amendment to Agreement 8231-18-PW with M6 Consulting Incorporated to increase that contract amount by $200,000 for a new contract value amount of $650,000 and extend the term date to February 28th, 2022. I am happy to take any questions.
I just want to say that I did see the presentation and I appreciate the fact that there is a presentation. I do feel regretful that the public doesn't see this at the same time that these items are discussed, but that's what the will of the voters was. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, Mr.
committee
Chair.
members.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
The question I have, are those funding allocated individually for Campus Park, for Central Park, and the control rooms renovation projects? Is this a
So
total in addition to?
yeah, those are some examples of some projects that will be utilizing these consultants to keep them moving forward, but it will not be utilizing the entire amount that we're trying to increase this contracts by. We're trying to keep some room in there for things that may happen between now and when the contracts expire in 2022. As they arise. For instance, M6 helps us with a lot of our grant applications, actually. And we've been very successful with M6 and getting a lot of the FEMA HMGP grants, for instance. And so as those arise, we'll want to make sure that we have enough funding in the contracts to be able to get M6 to assist us with those.
And one of the important things, Mr. Chair, is that Kenny Jenks consultants have been around for many, many years. You know, I haven't seen that name in a long time, but they're a good consulting company, which have been around for a long time. Thank you.
Committee Member Lopez, do you have any questions? No? Okay. I have a couple of questions. On slide number 3, I don't know if we can pull slide number 3 up. I don't know how this works, if I have the ability to request slide number 3 be pulled up. But in the presentation, Ms. Aaron, you used a term which I'm not sure, and I went back and listened twice, and it was for a specific thing, and it said for, quote, Wi-Fi and whatnot, and I'm wondering what that is. And if we don't have an answer now, I'll take the answer later on, but going back and listening to it, I was a little curious what that was. And I'm seeing, so we can pass on that one, but in the future, I'd like to find out. But then we can go to slide 5. And we talk about, on slide 5, we talk about the Wainimi Road easement acquisition. And on this Wainimi Road easement acquisition, don't we have a city attorney's office, or maybe there's a city attorney in the meeting that can address this? Don't they get involved in that?
Yes, they would also get involved.
I apologize. I'm not trying to get into knowing what your job is, but I just thought the lawyers get involved. And do we have to hire this outside firm to do the legal work?
So it's not necessarily just the legal work that they're doing. So they're actually our liaison between us and the agricultural customers, or where they're actually allowing us to install this pipeline. So they help us with entitlement services, which is a little different than using an attorney, for instance. So they help us write the easement documents and perform some of the negotiations with them. But we work with the city attorney's office in this process as well. They just have expertise that our attorneys wouldn't have in-house.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr.
Yes,
Chair,
go ahead, Mayor.
I think our city manager would like to share a couple of comments. He's on the podium.
No,
Okay, go ahead.
No?
I just wanted to remind you that we're not able to pull up the slides, but of course, we all have the written version in front of us. So when you say go to slide 5, we're doing it on paper in front of us.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Continuing on this particular item, these are some of the questions that I have specifically to the item that is called the Central Park Fountain Control Room renovation projects. And my concerns are this: who owns that fountain? No, I'll give you all of them so I don't play a game here. Who owns the fountain? How long have they owned the fountain? Any specific dollars in reserve to repair the fountain? And how has development contributed to the maintenance of this fountain? And the reason I ask, over the years, even before I got on this council, a lot of wheeling and dealing was done by the developers of River Park to shed the responsibilities that they were obligated to do onto the city of Oxnard. And I'm wondering, I'm aware from residents talking to me about the fountain, it works tremendously. And when it doesn't, then there's a lot of complaints. Do we own the fountain? Did Shea Homes own the fountain? Did any money get put in by developers? Are there fees with LMDs to go in and repair that? And I'm asking it for myself and for any other council members interested in this.
So I will not be able to answer all of those questions. I do know that we do own it and it's maintained through CFD funding. But I don't know if Rosemary, the Public Works Director, has any other insight into those questions.
Yes, Councilmember Perello, I'm not sure the exact ownership, but the LMD pays for the maintenance of the fountain. So even the project, the rebuilding of this is paid for by the LMD. So one of the things that has taken a while on this is the first, at first glance, that the way to fix this, completely rebuilding the electrical control room and everything else, would have been $1 million project. So instead, some temporary pumps were brought in, and we're able to find a way to do this more cheaply for about half of the cost. And because we know this is being borne by the LMD, which means it's being borne by those people who are property owners in River Park. And they are paying for this. We do special districts. It takes care of all of the various parts of all of the LMDs. But when there's a capital project, then engineering oversees the capital project, because it's a different animal than doing some of the normal contract management and other things that the special district staff do so well. So that's why we do this. And when Tatiana and her staff are doing these things, then their time is charged to the project.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. When we do these projects, is there value in, or we are involved in these projects, is there value engineering so that when the project is done, there is some expectation by the residents that are bearing the cost, how long these projects will last?
Well, true value engineering is done at higher cost projects than this project. A process called value engineering is done at a much higher cost. We do look, and I would say it was sort of like a mini value engineering that showed that there was a cheaper way, just, discussing it in-house, of making these repairs, getting this fountain back online, that the engineering staff went through. And so they were able to find a way to do this more cheaply, as opposed to some larger things. I don't know if Tatiana wants to elaborate at all on the process for changing how the fountain repair would be approached.
Yeah, I think the calling it a mini value engineering is the perfect way to look at this. We try to see, we looked at the overall objective and how can we get there not only faster, but more cost effectively. It wasn't the full process, but we were able to work with a consulting firm that was able to help us find a solution for that.
Thank the both of you. Appreciate the response. I appreciate the answers and the information. And I certainly hope some people from River Park are watching and paying attention. And again, this is District 2, ladies and gentlemen. Are there any more questions from the committee members? Do we have a recommendation from the committee?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Zaragoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Chair Perrello.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, and moving on to item 3. The subject is committee. It's a general manager's department. The subject is committee scoping for council 2021-25 2021-2025 5-year priorities. And I'll have staff read the recommendation. And again, this was available and is available on video, but it's done prior to the meeting because the voters took that action.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to go find the general manager. I'll be right back. So the recommendation, once again, is that the Public Works and Transportation Committee scope through only the lens of this committee's subject areas, the parameters for the upcoming council priorities discussion. And as you stated, to remind everyone, the presentation was pre-recorded. I certainly trust that everyone viewed it at least 3 times to memorize the presentation that I made. So I'm going to try to help frame the discussion for the committee tonight. Reminder that this is for the next 5-year priority priorities for the city council for years 2021 through 2025. At this stage in the process, we are simply scoping the priorities that fall within the jurisdiction of this committee. And then we take, and we're doing this at all the committees today. So earlier we did finance and governance. Right before this committee, we did public safety, community services, housing and economic development. And so now we have public works and transportation. And we are specifically looking at infrastructure and natural resources. And we have worked our recommendations. We're working off of the proposed Measure E spending that we discussed publicly going back to last September in terms of to help frame the upcoming workshop. Whatever input we get from the committees today, we will then incorporate it into a new community survey that we will issue in order to gain public input, and then we will provide that to the council and the public in a published agenda when we have the special city council workshop, where the entire council will cover all the areas. And at that meeting, we will work to among all of you, based on staff recommendations and community input, we will work to get whatever priorities you want to select for this 5-year period. So with that, I just want to remind you that in the areas of infrastructure and natural resources, we are recommending, of course, restoring various landscaping services, which means, getting back to a level of proper maintenance for our parkways and medians, proper maintenance of our trees, proper maintenance of our parks, including watering, mowing, all of that. Also, restoring ourselves back to a proper street paving cycle, as well as presenting a plan for maintaining and repairing our alleys and, as importantly, our seawalls down at the harbor. And finally, proper maintenance at all of our city parks and various other public spaces that we oversee. So those are the starting points that we have. And what we ask from the committee tonight is to tell us if there's anything that you want to change or add to this framework, so that we can again go get public input on whatever however you discuss these items tonight. And then we bring all of that back to the special council workshop, where the council again will make the actual decisions on the priorities. So again, tonight, we want to stay at a 30,000-foot level if possible. The last committee dive bombed right down to the ground level at the get-go. And that was interesting, but I ask that you try to stay at 30,000 foot, talk broadly policy-wise about the key priority areas. We will get to the details later, especially when the ultimate priorities will then inform the upcoming budget, and that's when we will get into the nitty-gritty. So and that's hopefully helpful in terms of framing your discussion with each other tonight. Thank you.
Hey, just a clarification, City Manager Nguyen, when you talk about the items, I'm holding it up right here. This is the slide that we'll be dealing with. It is the one that has infrastructure and natural resources is basically what we're focusing on.
Yes, as
Okay.
a starting point for your conversation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, whichever committee member would like to go. I have multiple questions and suggestions, and I'm very eager to hear what the rest of the committee has.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Mayor.
As the city manager mentioned, we at the Finance and Governance and Community Service, we discussed initially the revenues that are going to be needed for some of this items, and one of the things that we mentioned before, and you probably heard it, that our revenues are really significant, much greater than before, and that we've had additional funding and revenues from the CARES Act, from the state and county uh, resources or revenue resources, and other amendments to the mid-year budget that I believe is going to help us out in including Measure E. And some of the things that we were talking about, Mr. Chair, is that hopefully that we can replenish our reserves. Our general fund reserves are 12%. Our utilities are 25%, more than 25%. We're meeting the 25% reserves and so forth. So consequently, hopefully having that type of funding, we can help to restore, our landscaping, which the public has asked for that, which I think is really important. Our parkways, our gateways to the city, the tree maintenance. In fact, we had a presentation the other day by Public Works regarding our tree maintenance that we're going to be looking at for a main thoroughfares. And the cleaning up of our gateways is extremely important to all of us, make sure that our landscaping is nice and clean and something that we can all be proud of here driving into the city. Really important is the street maintenance, our potholes, make sure that that a lot of work that we need, and I'm sure how we can get to the alleys. The alleys need a lot of work because I've had individuals call me that some of the alleys are so bad that chuck holes, if you drive into a chuck hole, you might lose your car. And that's a bad joke, but potentially could happen. And park maintenance is, I think it's important that our children or our families have parks that are nice and green and mowed and so forth. So it's a quality of life issue that I think is important. And one of the things that Mr. Chair, we were also talking about is staffing, make sure that we beef up our staffing and also our FTEs, and also look at our budgets and make sure that we have the right individuals to actually meet those metrics that we're looking for in the next 5 years. And I know I'm rambling, but those are some of the items that I think that we need to look at. And the natural resources that we have here in the city of Oxnard are extremely important for all of us to maintain and also to improve the quality of life for our residents. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're very welcome, Mayor. Councilwoman Lopez?
Thank you. I think, our mayor mentioned a lot of the critical areas that I think generally we have been hearing, the greatest concern that probably ties into this committee. And I'm wondering if either our city manager can help us make how the connection, or if there is a connection in this process, considering this committee and that we have the capital improvements projects. I think that's very telling of where the need is, and including the alleys, including the parks, what improvements are needed. That I think it's a really good report that we've seen that outlines the cost, some of the funding, what the level of need that exists for each of those projects. So are we using that in this process, or is there room to use that I think would help guide us to focus? And I do appreciate the presentation, the way that it was outlined. I think this is just very reader friendly for our public and our community to see what this process is going to look like, and the fact that we're all contributing to it. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Council Member. And you bring up a great point about how this needs to be directly connected to the capital improvements program, as well as ultimately the budget. So the answer is absolutely yes. The issue for us is when we get to the special workshop and the council ultimately determines what the priorities are and in what order, then staff can come back in the budgeting process with pricing out what those priorities are. And then the council will have to then make, and they will be difficult decisions, because even though we're fortunate to have added revenue coming in the future, it's still a finite amount for a city of this size. So you'll have to choose how much in each bucket do you want to invest in and how fast? So our job is to come back and say, okay, if you, for priority A, if you want it done in 1 year, this is what it'll take. If you're willing to spread it over 2 years, this is what it'll cost across the 2 years. And you will be faced with difficult decisions in choosing, of all the priorities, which ones are going to come first. And of course, we will make our recommendations at the staff level, and I'm certain you'll hear, based on the public survey and public interaction during the special workshop, you will hear from the community as well. But ultimately, the council as a whole will have to make these decisions, and then my job will be to be accountable to delivering on whatever we commit to.
And Mr. Chair, one thing too that we mentioned too before, Mr. City Manager, was the metrics, of course, and the timeline, and the funding, the budget to correspond with E, and also with additional funding that we might have. It's extremely important for all of us to meet. And of course, you know, you're also going to talk that eventually this is going to be taken to workshops to the public. And also one of the things that we mentioned before, Mr. Chair, is that I would like to see that we have, I think I mentioned, we have about 1,300, 1,400 employees. Even we bring the public in, get their input, and also get our public employees, city employees, to help us with their input in order to, because they do the work. They do the work, and they know better than we do, and some of the things that can be done and how we can do it too. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to touch on the 3 items that are on the sheet that we have here. Restoring landscape services, restoring city infrastructure, keeping public spaces clean and safe. And I'd like to ask my first question for the city manager. Restoring city infrastructure, that would include the enterprise funds, would it not, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll start with that one. We have issues with levees in south of the below the freeway, the Ventura Freeway, and we have big issues with the levee north of the freeway. We have issues with the seawalls, and I know you addressed the matter with the seawalls. We have issues with water, sewer, and trash. And one thing that comes up, and I will use this as an example, not that none of the people here don't know this example, but nobody really complained or paid attention that the sewer plant was falling down around our ears until it became falling down around our ears and we couldn't avoid it any longer. If we don't pay attention to the enterprise funds and what they need and prioritize that, and I'll take one, doesn't matter if you flush the toilet, drink out of the tap, or put the garbage on the curb and the trash picks it up. They're all important. But one that's really important is water. And with the issues coming to the city based on potential reductions from water being allowed to pump out of the ground due to rules and saltwater intrusion and a lot of things, and there's lawsuits currently involved with that. The city is a party. The water security is a big deal. It can be as minimum water security from 30,000 feet, looking about, are we getting taken advantage of as a city compared to the other areas? Do we have to stand and fight for our rights to protect 250,000 people, close to 250,000 people who live here? Still waiting for that census. Down to, as the city manager said, bombing it. The fences around the water's properties. I mean, I can step over the fences and I'm in the water yard. That's not good. So infrastructure, the streets and the alleyways and things like that. I still contend that we need to take a good look, a damn good look at the voter approved measure requiring the pavement reach a certain threshold. And that pavement reaching a certain threshold will take X amount of dollars. And if we don't reach that threshold, we lose Measure O, which in the past is between $8 and $14 million a year. We lose that source of revenue. What can we do to get work done, at least to present it to the public and the council? It's possible or it's not possible. A presentation in my mind needs to be made. Is there a way to save that revenue to the life expectancy of Measure O? Instead of, as the voters required, they want a certain threshold. I believe that needs to be presented to the council. The coming back into restoring infrastructure. One of the things it's come to my attention in a very uncomfortable situation that some of the security and camera systems, and this would get into, I believe, the center bullet, restoring city infrastructure, are not working. We recently had an incident where an employee had a problem with there was a problem, and the cameras that would have captured it, they're not working. And we had an incident not long ago, a few years ago, where same situation, same area, cameras weren't working. We had a recent incident where there was an arsonist got into the city attorney's office. No cameras. This has got, I know we're not supposed to talk about this stuff, but it's no different than when somebody got into our electronic communications and they held us at ransom for a period of time. These are serious matters that do not come to the public's attention until there's a highlight, a nice, bloody, sexy story on the newspaper, and everybody goes, hey, what happened? Whether it's an assault or whether it's the sewer plant falling down around our ears. Those things I consider are very important, along with streets, alleys, the seawalls and the levees. Okay, and moving on to the public spaces. And I'm hopefully I'm not exceeding the time. I believe we've got plenty of time. Keeping public spaces clean and safe. The proper maintenance of city parks and public spaces. Excellent point of view. But it's often said we want to have our entryways to the city looking beautiful. And again, tonight in this meeting, it's been mentioned we have 1,300 employees. I really wonder how many of those 1,300 employees on their way to work and on their way home take the opportunity to notice something and make a 311 call, whether it's graffiti, wrecked cars, shopping carts, abandoned mattresses. We could have our refuse department working, resource recovery department working overtime, which people will complain about the expense, but we could be improving the quality of our city simply by asking those 1,300 people, can you pay attention when you drive to work if you see something, and make a note of it, and when you go home, make a note of it. Maybe even change up your route. Some people live in the city of Oxnard, some people don't live in the city of Oxnard. When they get back to not having to work at home and they work within the city of Oxnard, these 1,300 people, that's 2,600 eyes. That's a lot of eyes. And that's a big improvement for a city of Oxnard. And granted, the same should be said for all elected officials. Council members, mayors, treasurers, and clerks do the same thing. Recently, with respect to keeping restoring landscape services and moving to the next one, restoring landscape. The recent windstorm we had, it brought to the point, yes, it was a heck of an event, but it brought to the point that over decades, the deferred maintenance, the extreme deferred maintenance, allowed these trees to get in a situation where they did a lot of damage. We lost a lot of value in those trees. We can even look at the pack. The siding got blown off the pack. Thank God nobody apparently was hurt. But these types of things are examples of what's happened in the past when the city didn't pay attention to business and they only worried about when somebody came up and they wanted this, we took care of things. It's almost as if the city was Santa Claus. Santa Claus is not the city of Oxnard. We can't be giving out things to help certain community groups that are the most vocal. There are very important things, but the main infrastructure, take your human body, your respiratory system, your circulation system, your structural system doesn't work. It doesn't matter what kind of jewelry you're wearing or what color your hair is, what color your clothes are. If the main components of your system aren't in good shape, you got a problem. And we have gone through that, through the good. It's been mentioned that the finances. I think that some of the thing that should be said about the finances is through the tremendously good work of the people that have been brought in. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it was a revolving door here in the finance department. We have some people that through their actions and the support of the city council have made a tremendous difference in the city and got the reserves to where they should be. But if we don't keep focused on the good works that those people need and the help that they need, we may not be in that situation. It doesn't take much to fall back. It didn't take much, apparently, to get us in that spot. The landscaping and the maintenance, I mean, I hear that all the time. My district, District 1, there are a lot of people that are very unhappy. And some of those same people are one of the reasons I asked the question tonight. They continually say things like, how are we going to spend $500,000 with a consultant? They don't pay attention that money has been built up over time in a contract. And a complaint is made, well, the consultant didn't do any actual raking of leaves. And I did have the opportunity to hear the other two programs this morning, and there was an individual that called in, and I don't always agree with the individual, but he made a point. I like to say something like meat and potatoes. He made a hell of a point. If you have a task to dig a ditch and you hire one more supervisor, unless that supervisor has a shovel in his or her hand, that ditch isn't getting dug any faster. It's the people that do the work. And the management and the managers, the supervisors, they all do work. But there's a perception that needs to be changed in the city. And that partly the perception is that we have not, as a community, paid attention to these very basic things that our city manager is holding our feet to the fire. You need to pay attention to these things. I really think this presentation before the committees is a good idea. It makes us think about that. And if we go back and watch the other comments from the other committees, I think it'll be well worthwhile. And we'll try to get our city going for the next several years to get it in a better shape. Because, ladies and gentlemen, when I'm dead and buried, it could be tomorrow, it could be a year, it could be 10 years. I want the city to be in better shape than it was when I got on this council. And I don't believe there's anyone working tonight that doesn't feel the same way. This is a hell of a city. We're very fortunate to live in this city. I mean, recently, the weather, my God, this is a fantastic place to live. Like anything, it's got its pimples, warts, all that kind of stuff. But this is a hell of a place to live, and we deserve to leave a better place for the residents in the city. And that's not a campaign speech. That's how I feel about this. If there's any other comments by committee members, I'm open, or a response by the city manager or anyone else.
I have one very quick response. You'll
And
be
Mr.
happy
Chair,
to-
when he finishes, then I'd like to add to what the council member made.
just very quickly, you'll be happy to know that I'm no Santa Claus.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Mayor.
Mr. Chair, I think it says something important about the cleanliness of our city. I've always said, if our residents were to sweep their own curbs before refuse collection and after refuse collection, we will need to pay for a sweeper. I personally have done it for years and years, and in my cul-de-sac where I live, everybody sweeps their refuse and their leaves into the trash can, and after the refuse is removed, then they sweep the curb again. And if we would all to do that, we will save a tremendous amount of money, and each neighborhood can do that. One of the things that you said that was really important about 1,300, 1,400 employees, I believe in that. And we used to do that before, where, especially when I used to run the refuse division, if you saw something out there, if it's pick it up, if you see a plastic bag or a mattress or whatever, pick it up or report it immediately so we could take care of it. Don't let it lie there and say that belonged to another department. Those type of things are really important for all of us. And use the 311 to report it. Regarding the street PCI of our streets, if we, my understanding, Mr. Chair, is that we're probably at a 60 PCI right now. And I think you said something important. If we're looking maybe have a PCI of 70, and that's a pavement condition index, just for information for the public. That's the condition of the street. We're at 60 PCI now. If we go to 70, the question that you asked, how much money is it going to cost us? And then we need a report on that, which I think is an excellent recommendation. Regarding the enterprise funds, sewer, trash, and water are basic needs. With sewer, if you flush the toilet, you want that stuff to go someplace. And you put your trash out, you want it picked up, because if you've seen strikes in the major cities and so forth, if you don't pick up trash, you see a lot of those white things going back and forth, and and that is not healthy at all. And also water, boy, that's life right there. And those are basic services for health and safety items that we really need. And the wastewater plant needs to be upgraded absolutely, because we need to treat that sewage, and consequently maybe recycle it eventually. That brown water can become water that um, can be infiltrated into or drain into our land, and make it a recyclable water that can be blended eventually with our Fox Canyon water and other waters too. So I think those items are really basic infrastructure items that we need to focus on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I did forget, this is not just a city of Oxnard issue, but this is a issue with county and the city, the water quality in the harbor. That is another issue that, it's a long thing. But we do have a recycling program with the water, and it's going to be tremendous, big investment. It will be a big help. Madam Council Member Lopez, do you have any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Perello. I think we could probably spend the entire meeting just talking about the number of issues that we have, and I think that that's part of what I understood even from the city manager's presentation is how do we more generally identify the areas that we want to see improvements in for the next 5 years, because the issues are definitely ongoing. I think the more that we talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, and then there's Ormond Beach and Perkins Road, and I mean we could just go on and on. I think generally everyone, both council, staff, residents, we want to see a cleaner, a safer city. And I think with the information that we have received, at least in shaping this conversation and what these priorities look like, to leave it in a place that will also allow our staff to put these priorities into effect through the work that we will be doing in the council as well. So I just wanted to follow up and say that yes, there's a laundry list of issues that we can name that need to be addressed, and it's a matter of how do we narrow it down enough to as was mentioned in the presentation, for it to be measurable so that we can reach those goals, and I don't know how we can do that, Mr. Nguyen. How do we narrow it down enough to make sure that these priorities are successful for our residents and for the council?
Mr. Chair, can I add one more question? The Councilmember Lopez just reminded me of something that we talked about at Councilmember Lopez and you. We need to concentrate more on South Oxnard. In fact, our city manager and I were talking about internet, for example, and other items that we need for South Oxnard that is really, really important. And some of those things that we need to concentrate is more on how we can help South Oxnard, not only with infrastructure, with the internet, with transportation, with ambulance service, with health service, and especially with COVID right now. But COVID, hopefully we can get rid of it in before the 5 years. But definitely we need to concentrate on those areas that need a lot of help, like South Oxnard.
Right.
Thank you.
And if I can chime in.
City Manager, will you please respond to Ms. Lopez, to Councilwoman Lopez's questions and concerns?
Yes,
please.
yes. And I appreciate her comments because it kind of pulls us back. It's like the gravity that helps to pull us back to reality here in terms of there's only so much we can do. There's only so much resources we have. There's only so much capacity with staff. Obviously, part of my job is to balance all that in order to meet the objectives of the council, because you obviously have the policy making authority and you lead the city based on representing the community. It's going to come down to, we're going to put, when we get to the council workshop, after having heard council input at these committees and whatever information responses we get back from the public survey, we will serve up options, but ultimately, and as Councilmember Lopez said, we could, in every committee, we could have just continued on the list of really important needs. And the ultimate balancing act for the council is figuring out what do we need, what do we want, and what do we wish for? I mean, those are very different categories. And the council is going to have to struggle amongst each other, and staff will serve to help answer questions, but how to actually prioritize for this 5-year window. And if we want to spend a lot of resources, for example, on the landscaping in years 1 and 2, that's going to mean fewer resources for some of the other priorities in years 1 and 2. So part of it is balancing it out. But I do believe that it's an exciting time to be able to do this in a way that is going to be realistic and achievable, and in a way where you can hold me accountable on behalf of the organization, and where the public can hold all of us accountable to what we decide on the priorities and how we then proceed to budget, both in the capital improvement program and the annual budget, and how we allocate funding again. But ultimately, the council will have to struggle at the workshop on compromising and debating which priorities come first and how much and how fast. And once you establish what those priorities, then staff will go back and we will price them out in terms of the details. And then as you decide on the capital improvements program and the budget, you will then pick and choose. Is it $10 for landscaping and $5 for parks? Or is it $7.50 for landscaping and $7.50 for parks in year 1? Those are choices that you must make. And they will be difficult choices because, again, we all know, you all know all too well, there are a lot of needs. There are so many things we really should be endeavoring to restore in terms of services and programs. And there's so many things we want to improve, and there are plenty of things we want to add. So it's going to be a interesting juggling act when this comes back for the council workshop. But you will be forced to pick and choose, because we can't have everything all at once. Some things will have to be deferred into the future beyond the 5-year window. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. I've had the opportunity to watch the 3 meetings. They're very good. And I need to say 2 things. The city has come a long way in the last few years, a long, long way. It has a ways to go. There's a long ways to go, but it's come a tremendous amount of way. And I don't want to go back where it was. The other thing is, I'm very grateful that the council took the decision that they did, that we're going to have an appointment for an individual to represent District 2. And then there will be an election in November, is the earliest legal opportunity for an election to get the voters to have their say in who they want representing them. Because the decisions that were being talked about right now, we need somebody at the table representing their district, because the cities, because of a lawsuit, went into districts. I was a supporter of districts. This will be one of the things that will be a real test. How well do we work together? Because as Councilmember Lopez has mentioned, how do we accomplish this? There's going to be give and take. And one thing that I would like to point out in the analogy that, in the example that Mr. City Manager used, if we do the landscape $5 and the parks $10, or we do $7.50 for each one, what do we know is the base right now? How do we judge the base? If it's the landscaping is getting $5, and we know that that's the standard right now, in double the, for a bad example, not for a just a discussion, we double the amount of money focused on landscape, it's going to look twice as good. Same thing with parks. We need to have something where we have a scope, a schedule, and a budget, and we know what we're doing, because the city manager is absolutely right. Wishes, wants, and desires are all different. They're all different. And some are much more important to moving forward as a community. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, this is, I believe they've been doing a receive and file on this. Are there any other comments by anybody?
Mr. Chair, I just want to share something. You said something important there that we're looking at how much funding we're going to have per plan, but also one of the things that we need to think is the continued maintenance of whatever we do, future maintenance and the funding that's going to be required to do that. So,
And I agree with you, Mayor, and that's where I made the comment about Santa Claus. Santa Claus can buy you a pony, but somebody's got to get the horse and the water and the feed and everything else that goes with getting a pony at Christmas. Santa Claus has to make some pretty tough decisions.
right.
Mayor, Councilmember Lopez, you look like you had a comment.
Yeah, no, yeah, that was, I mean, I think that's a very, following in both of your comments, and that's very true that, if there's opportunities to look at perhaps some projects or how can we be creative about addressing some of these issues, like was mentioned with, illegal dumping and just, I mean, that tends to just come up a lot, especially in our alleyways, especially along the, J Street. I mean, there's certain areas that, we see a lot of that. It's like, I think that's one of those areas that we just can't seem to get the message across, to residents about the fact that there are places where, some of these old mattresses and large pieces of furniture can be disposed of, because that's one area that continues to be an issue for public works and how, so just wanted to add that you're right. I mean, there might be some projects that might or some needs that will require a greater investment in the beginning, and hopefully there's some that will just be one initial investment and won't be a continuous cost. But again, that's a wish, right? So thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can chime in real quick. So
Go ahead,
those comments are fantastic because it helps us on staff understand where your minds are at this stage. And as we go through this process, it will obviously get more clarity and then ultimately get the priorities. When we have your priorities, we will come back in the budgeting process and present you with options. And to your point of, well, if we spend so much money on this, what are we getting and how fast do we get it? We will present options. So it won't be either spend $10 on landscaping or not. It'll be, if you want to get these, for example, I think trees are easier because we can literally count them. So we can, we'll come with a program that says, okay, well, we have 50-some thousand trees, and if you want to get us on a 10-year pruning process, then it would cost this much. If you want to get on a 5-year pruning process, it would cost this much. And then you can weigh and balance that out. Well, if you spend for the 10-year cycle, that's X number of dollars. Now you know how much you have left for the other priorities and vice versa. So the priorities give us a clear roadmap, and then my job is to present you with options of how to go down that roadmap. And it's a question of, in some cases, are we going in a Ferrari or can we go in a Toyota pickup? And those are the choices you will make.
And Mr. Chair, too, we need to have some equity in our priorities too. It's important that we have a balance on that too, which I think is extremely important.
Absolutely. We fully support that on staff. But again, that is the role and the responsibility of the council to make those balancing judgments.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all. And one more thing, City Manager brought up the trees, and I missed this one. There are neighborhoods in the city of Oxnard where the trees have grown and they obstruct the streetlights. But there are also, the mayor is bringing up equity. There are also areas in the city of Oxnard where the illumination from streetlights is not the same as in others. And I think that needs to be everybody everybody should be treated the same in that way. And I know that's the ultimate goal, but please add that to the list of the consideration. Any other comments? If not, we'll move on to the next item. Madam City Clerk, do we need or Madam, whoever the attorney is, we don't need a motion on this one. Am I correct?
No motion.
That's correct. It's
That is
discussion
correct.
only.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item, it's items for future agendas. Do either of the committee members have items for future agendas?
No, sir.
Matt, no? Okay, I do have one. Since there's been a breakdown of the committees, and it's changed right now because of what has recently the voters have done. An item on a future agenda. I believe that if we can get our committee to work with possibly Public Safety Committee on transportation, and that is the title of this committee, Public Works and Transportation, the rail service that could go through our community and go into Castaic Junction, the main intersection where we are not able to go, could eliminate a tremendous amount of truck traffic on the streets and could generate a lot more jobs, in my opinion. I think it is worth combining our efforts and sources to potentially push to get that done. Because when the rails were washed out in north of Fillmore, they have not been replaced and the rail line is out. And having worked in the auto area where they bring in the cars, that is a big deal. There would be a lot more cars going in that direction and many fewer trucks. And that would be a benefit, I believe, to the community. And I forgot to add that one.
Mr. Chair.
And I would hope that we would do that, no matter who's on a committee or who's working with whatever elected officials. The more pressure applied in different directions, the more opportunity for a successful outcome. More hands make the work a lot easier.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Chair, just for information, Mayor Pro Tem McDonald belongs to VCTC, Ventura County Transportation Commission, and we're now going to have Daniel Chavez. That item can be brought before VCTC, and that will be an appropriate venue or agency to bring it to, behalf of this committee.
Well, I happen to agree with you. That's probably the appropriate one, but it's been going to that organization for as long as I've been on this council.
But
That's
we need to bring it up again.
Not what I consider successful. So maybe we could do something.
But that's where the funding is, VCTC, just for information that
Okay.
potentially that could be brought up through our Mayor Pro Tem and also Daniel Chavez.
We have some new elected officials in the state, and maybe they could assist in applying pressure. But
Absolutely.
I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Any other suggestions for items? Nope. Okay. With that, we'll move to the next meeting. And do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Zaragoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Chair Perrello.
Yes. Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Please be
Thank
safe,
you.
everybody.
Thank you and good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Good night.